You did it. You woke up today. You even got out of bed. You deserve a reward. We can't all be morning people, but we can all get McDonald's for breakfast.
Right now, mix and match a Chicken McGriddles or a McChicken Biscuit for just $3. Order ahead on the Mickey D's app. Price and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with combo meal. Single item at regular price. Mobile order and pay at participating McDonald's.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. You did it. You woke up today. You even got out of bed. You deserve a reward. We can't all be morning people, but we can all get McDonald's for breakfast.
Right now, mix and match a Chicken McGriddles or a McChicken Biscuit for just $3. Order ahead on the Mickey D's app. Price and participation may vary. Cannot be combined with combo meal. Single item at regular price. Mobile order and pay at participating McDonald's.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Hello there, welcome to another episode of This Week in History with me, your host, Dan the Viking. Now, before we get started, same as every week, I'd just like to say hello and welcome to Dan, my new Patreon member, and I hope you're enjoying the additional bonus content that you get on that show, and the fact that you'll get all of your episodes ad-free. So if that sounds good to any of you guys, and you don't want to listen to these adverts, get yourselves over to patreon.com/This Week in History. It's $5 a month, and you'll get access to extra shows, and you'll also get access to all of these shows but without the adverts. So hopefully that's enough of an incentive to get you guys over there. If you can't get over to Patreon to support us, you can also support us by sharing the podcast with friends and family on episodes that you think they might like. And also by leaving us a review. A 5-star review goes a long way to supporting the podcast and helps us improve where we can, and helps certain things that we do. Because obviously I've had a few bits of feedback over the last few weeks. Some positive, some slightly negative. I got a little bit of a telling off, I'm sure many of you saw, about the, I'm going to put in quotations, American bashing that I did on the Israel-Palestine episode. But it is just friendly banter, and as I'm sure you guys are aware, I absolutely love the USA, and I love you guys for listening to me. So, no offence, and I hope we can draw a line with that. However, this week we are covering possibly one of the, well, certainly one of the most famous disasters in modern history. Something that, for everybody listening to this podcast who was alive, I know we do have some guys that are quite young, but anybody who was alive during September the 11th, 2001 will remember where they were when they found out. It was one of those that everybody has a different account, and everybody has an opinion on it. Everybody remembers it in their own way. So before I'll start off, I will just give you what I remember. I was 10 years old, nearly 11 years old, and I was at a childminder's. I'd just finished school. It was about 3 o'clock, about 3:30, no, about 3:05, 3:10 in England. And I was at a childminder's. I'd finished school, and all of a sudden I was outside playing, and the childminder came in and said, "Oh, can you all come in and just watch the TV?" And we came in, and one of the girls who I went to school with shouted, "Oh my God, America is collapsing." And at that point, we were watching the TV, and the second plane hit the tower. And it's one of those things that, even at 10 years old, I will remember for the rest of my life. It was a shocking display of terrorism. One of the worst, like I said, probably the worst terrorist attack. It's certainly the worst in my living memory. And for many Americans, it was even worse. the worst thing about it for many Americans was this was the first time America had ever really been attacked on home soil by a foreign power. And there is a slight deviance in that, just for historical records, where a Japanese balloon bomb hit mainland America in California, killing 2 people during the Second World War, and a lot of people class Pearl Harbor. But I mean, when you're talking about mainland America, this was a massive blow to the American psyche. Very much like the British had with the Blitz. It was that sort of feeling of, actually, we're not as safe as we think we are, and we are vulnerable to certain things. Now, I have been requested with this episode to cover some of the conspiracy theories behind that, behind 9/11, which I don't want to do, and I'm going to just put it out there. This isn't a conspiracy podcast. There are so many conspiracy podcasts out there that will give you all the conspiracy theories about 9/11. This is not one of them. So I will be sticking to the timeline, the historical facts, and what we know. Any conspiracies, and believe me, there are certain ones that I believe, but I won't be going into them. So we shall start with, like I said, we'll start with the timeline and where this all started on September the 11th, 2001. So the first incident started at 7:59 a.m., which was Flight 11, American Airlines Flight 11, with 92 people aboard, takes off from Boston Logan Airport en route to Los Angeles. 15 minutes later, at 8:14, United Airlines 175, Boeing 767, with 65 people, takes off from Boston and also is heading to Los Angeles. At 8:19, flight attendants aboard Flight 11 alert ground personnel that the plane has been hijacked. So it's only taken them 20 minutes to take that plane. At 8:20, American Airlines Flight 77 takes off from Dulles International Airport just outside of Washington, D.C., and is also heading to Los Angeles with 74 passengers on board. At 8:24, hijacker Mohammed Atta makes the first 2 accidental transmissions from Flight 11 to ground control, and this was apparently in an attempt to communicate with the plane's cabin, which he obviously failed. It then went silent, and at 8:40, air traffic controllers at the Federal Aviation Administration alert North American Aerospace Defense Command, or NORAD, as most of you guys will know, about the suspected hijacking of Flight 11, and they scramble 2 fighter planes located at Cape Cod Otis International Guard Base and to locate and tail Flight 11. However, these planes do not leave the grounds before Flight 11 crashes into the North Tower. At 8:41, United Airlines Flight 93, with 44 people, takes off from Newark International Airport en route to San Francisco. It had been scheduled to depart at 8 o'clock. However, due to the hijackings, it had been pushed back. Now, to me, that plane should never have left the ground. They knew something was going on at 8:41. That plane should never have left the ground. Anyway, the next point, at 8:46 a.m., Mohammed Atta and the other hijackers aboard American Flight 11 crashed the plane into the 93rd to 99 floors of the North Tower of the World Trade Center, killing everybody on board instantly and hundreds inside the building within seconds. 8:47, within seconds, the New York's bravest, the New York Police Department and the Fire Department dispatch units to the World Trade Center. Port Authority Police Department officers on site begin to evacuate the North Tower immediately. At 8:50, President George W. Bush is informed of the incident. Now, I remember seeing the video of him sat at an elementary school reading a book, And for anybody who tells me that the president has had something to do with this, watch his reaction, and you tell me that if he had something to do with that, he deserves an Oscar, because that is the best performance I have ever seen. That man knew nothing. He was as dumbfounded as everybody in New York stood there watching. And I'd question anybody to prove me wrong on that. 9:02, after initial instructions of tenants of the World Trade Center South Tower to remain in the building, Port Authority officials broadcast orders to evacuate both towers via the public address system. An estimated 10 to 14,000 people are already in the process of evacuating. Now, if it was, and I'm not saying no one did anything wrong in this. However, 15 minutes prior to this, you've just seen a plane hit the building next to you. For you to stay in that building, I don't know how you do it. I'd have been running down the stairs at that point. I'd have been like, sod this is not a day for me to be in work, I'm going. I'd have just been gone. And I don't know how people sort of went and stayed. I just don't get it. And obviously at 9:02, that's when they were told to evacuate both towers. At 9:03, United Airlines 175 crashed into floors 75 to 85 of the South Tower, killing everybody on board, and again hundreds inside the tower within seconds. 9:08, the FAA bans all flights takeoffs going into or out of New York and airspace, and they grounded everything around the city as well. A little bit too late, if you ask me. I think they should have done that as soon as they heard hijacking. Obviously this is something that they learn from, and I think now there is obviously a lot more stringent rules when it comes to airports. 9:21, the Port Authority closes all bridges and tunnels into New York City. And at 9:24, the FAA notifies NIADS of suspected hijacking of Flight 77 after some passengers and crew aboard are able to alert family members on the ground. 9:31, speaking from Florida, President Bush calls the events in New York City an apparent terrorist attack on our country. So at this point, nobody really knows who's taking responsibility. You're only really half an hour in, and America's come to a standstill, and I'm sure all you guys who remember this, remember that it's an apparent terrorist attack. And you may even remember the story beforehand where they said, it was only a small aircraft that hit the North Tower, because obviously at first nobody realised that it was a commercial jet that hit the first tower. 9:37, hijackers aboard Flight 77 crashed the plane into the western facade of the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., killing 59 aboard and 125 military and civilian personnel inside the building. Now, this is something that gets missed a lot, is the fact that one did hit the Pentagon, and nearly 200 people, or just over 200 people, are killed immediately from this attack, and it's quite scary. It's the focus obviously is on the towers, because the towers were massive news, but the attack on the Pentagon, people, I think, sort of falls out of a lot of people's minds. 9:42, for the first time in history, the FAA grounds all flights over or bound for the continental United States, and over the next 2.5 hours, some 3,300 commercial flights and 1,200 private planes are guided to land at airports in Canada instead of the United States. 9:45, amid escalating rumours of other attacks, the White House and US Capitol buildings are evacuated. And this is a very, very scary thought, to think that the White House is being evacuated. You know, this is the center of US politics and has been the home of the president since 1776, and now it's being evacuated for possibly one of the first times in history, or at least the first time since 1814. 9:59, a moment that will last with everybody, is when the South Tower collapsed. You know, and it's only taken an hour, not even an hour, for that South Tower to have been hit and to have collapsed. And, you know, amidst all the panic and chaos, and obviously, like I said, I'm dealing with facts here. It's crazy to just take a side note on how people dealt with it. You know, we've all seen the pictures. We all remember people jumping from the towers. We've all seen the videos of New Yorkers just stood horrified at the bottom of the towers, not knowing what to do. I mean, that the fear inside the tower of realizing that you're above the floor that's been hit. There's no way down. You're either going to burn to death or you've got to jump. And I think when that fear hits a human, every instinct in your body is telling you not to jump. But these people decided that fear, or that emotion of doing something like that was going to be a quicker death than staying in a burning building. And I can't honestly say how I deal with that, and I can believe many people listening to this would be exactly the same. You know, a lot of people are religious in America. It's your religion tells you suicide is wrong, but then what do you do in that situation? It's a horrifying thought, and I think what makes it worse is the fact that when these guys and ladies, men and women, jumped from these towers, this wasn't instant death. That jump took somewhere between 8 to 15 seconds, depending on how high you were up the tower. That's a long time knowing that this is the last journey that you're ever going to take. That sort of 15 seconds. And, you know, there's stories of, you know, one New York firefighter going into the North Tower at the minute or within minutes of it being hit, and someone had jumped, and as he went into the tower, the woman landed on top of him and killed him instantly. You know, there's so many stories like that. And when that South Tower collapsed, just immediately there was over 250 firemen inside that building when everybody else was running away. When everybody was leaving New York, everybody was trying to get away from these towers, and yet the New York Fire Department walked in. They walked in literally to a death. They walked to their own death, and they did it to save lives. And you just can't put into words the respect and the bravery of these men. You know, it's unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable how they did it. So yeah, if anybody on here is a fireman, or, you know, part of the New York Fire Department or the police department in New York, and you remember that day, drop me a message, because I would love to do an episode with people who, you know, who witnessed it firsthand, people who were in New York, even if you were just there on the day. I'd love to do an episode of people who remember it more vividly than what we do from TV. Bit of a digression there, so we're going to flash forward to 10:07. Whilst everybody's dealing with the collapse of the World Trade Center Passengers and crew members aboard the hijacked Flight 93 contact friends and family and learn about the attacks in New York and Washington. They know that this plane is going somewhere to kill thousands of people. And they mount an attempt to retake the plane. And in a response to that, the hijackers deliberately crashed the plane in a field in Somerset County, Pennsylvania, killing all 40 passengers and crew aboard. Now, again, these guys, from what I can work out, the trajectory of Flight 93 was on its way to the White House. From what I can gather, I mean, I might be wrong here, and if I am, let me know. But there's 40 people on board that have sacrificed their own life. They know they're going to die, but they sacrificed their own life to save potentially thousands of Americans and potentially your commander-in-chief, because I don't know how many of them on that plane would have realised that at this point the president wasn't in Washington. He could have been. That plane could have gone into the White House. It could have taken out the president. And it didn't. And I think it's down to the brave men and women on that plane who decided to try and take it back. Just a few moments later, though, 10:28, the World Trade Center North Tower collapses after it was hit 102 minutes previously. 11 a.m., Mayor Rudolph Giuliani calls for the evacuation of Lower Manhattan south of Canal Street, including more than 1 million residents, workers and tourists, as efforts continue throughout the afternoon to search for survivors at the World Trade Centers. I don't know how many they found, but from what I've seen with that rubble going down and the way they collapsed, I just don't see how they found anybody, and if they did, I don't know. Do you know what? I've not even. This may be one of the most under-researched episodes I've done, because I have so many feelings about this, and I have so many questions about this that I think I've got more questions for you guys than I have answers. You know, how many were found under the rubble? How many police officers and firemen did die that day? You know, how many people managed to escape from above where the planes hit? Did anybody escape from above where the planes were hit? You know, there's so many questions. 1 p.m., Barksdale Air Force in Louisiana, President Bush announces that U.S. military forces are on high alert worldwide. You got to remember, the US, much like Britain, has got military bases all over the world. We have an American Air Force base down the road from where I used to live, called RAF Lakenheath, which is just in Norfolk, and it's amazing. You go past it, and you can see the F-15s taking off and things like that. It's a wonderful air base. You know, the sound of those Raptors when they go past is amazing. But you've got to remember, you've got military personnel potentially in the Middle East. We don't know exactly where these have come from. You know, they don't know exactly what's happened. This was all hearsay and speculation at the moment. They don't know exactly what's happened. This was all going so fast. 2:51 p.m. the US Navy dispatches missile destroyers to New York and Washington DC, and at 5:20 the 47-story 7 World Trade Center collapses after burning for hours. The vehicle had been evacuated in the morning and there were no casualties, though the collapse forces rescue workers to flee for their lives. and it is the last of the Twin Towers to fall. Now, that was a bit of a shock to me, because I didn't even know that there was a third World Trade Center, or Trade 7 World Trade. You just hear about the two big. You don't hear about a 47-story building that collapses 3-4 hours after the first one. It's just wasn't covered very much in the British news. 6:58, President Bush returns to the White House, and at 8:30 he addresses the nation, and he says the evil and despicable acts of terror, declaring that America, its friends and allies, will stand together to win the war against terrorism. Now, this was possibly one of the worst events in my living history, and the aftermath of September the 11th has been felt all around the world, and it's been sort of the start of so many terrorist attacks across the world since. Just to give you the figures, 2,977 people were killed, 19 hijackers, and more than 6,000 were injured. Immediate deaths included 265 on the 4 planes. That does include the terrorists, but whether you can call them human or not is debatable. 2,606 died in the World Trade Center and surrounding areas. You've got to remember, when these buildings fell, there's shrapnel, glass, projectiles all flying off these buildings. If you were close enough, you may not even have had to have been at work that day, or even, part of the thing. You could have just been stood there watching. It's very, very possible that this actually, you were part of the aftermath. 125 people died at the Pentagon, and obviously the 44 are included in the planes. The attacks remain the deadliest terrorist attack in world history. So you have the worst ever terrorist attack. Most of those who died were civilians. That, I think, makes it worse. 344 firefighters died. 71 law enforcement officers died at the World Trade Center. And there was another law enforcement officer who died when Flight 93 crashed in Pennsylvania. 55 military personnel died at the Pentagon. And there is a breakdown. There were more than 90 countries who lost citizens at the World Trade Center, which just explains how massive this was, how this affected everybody around the world. There were 67 people from the United Kingdom that died, 47 from the Dominican, 41 from India, 39 from Greece, 28 from South Korea, 24 from Canada and Japan, 18 from Colombia, 16 from Jamaica, 16 from the Philippines, 15 from Mexico, 14 from Trinidad and Tobago, 13 from Ecuador, 11 Australians, 11 Germans, 10 Italians, 6 from Bangladesh, Ireland, Pakistan and Poland. That's just to name a few. So this is amazing, this story. It is one of those stories that will live on forever. It's something that people will always remember. As of August 2013, medical authorities concluded that 1,140 people who worked, lived or studied in Lower Manhattan at the time of the attack have been diagnosed with cancer as a result of exposure to toxins at Ground Zero. it has been reported that over 1,400 9/11 rescue workers who responded to the scene in the days and months after the attacks have since died. At least 10% were lost as a result of 9/11, and neither the FBI nor New York City officials recorded the casualties of the 9/11 attacks in their crime statistics. So even more people have died or have had lifelong illnesses because of the 9/11 attacks. Now, this is a very heartfelt episode. This is a very, very hard episode to record because it is such an important time in history, and it is something that, you know, we always say in this country, and we have. I mean, I personally have never said it, but I have heard people say, "God, here we go, 9/11, Americans going on about the terrorist attack again. We don't go on about the Blitz." And this is coming from older generations. We don't go on about the Blitz. And I'm thinking, the difference is the Blitz was a time of war. Civilian casualties are almost expected at a time of war. This was the worst terrorist attack in human history. This was the first time anybody had ever attacked mainland USA since 1812, since the War of 1812. And this was something that shocked the world because it was recorded. You know, we all can see the videos of these towers falling down. We've all seen the video of the second plane going into the tower. We've all seen the aftermath and the way that America as a country pulled together and stood up as a nation against terrorism. And the one thing I will say about this is America proved on that day that they were a united country. Everybody in America felt the same gut-wrenching, horrible, sickly feeling that they all felt the same. Everybody in America. And, you know, this is something I would love Americans now to look back at this and think, do you know what? 20 years ago, it took the worst terrorist attack in human history to unite this country, and everybody was singing from the same hymn sheet. Now, much like the UK, it's a very fractured country. It's a very split country down the middle. There's left and right, and you know, let's remember how America was when they were all united and all felt the same. It was, you know, it shouldn't take something like that, but it was an absolutely heinous act, and there is a reason why I have not mentioned any other than the one terrorist. You know, I can name all 19. Don't want to give them the airtime. Don't care about them. Not bothered about them in any way, shape or form. You know, it found out later, obviously we know the statistics, the facts, that this was Al-Qaeda / Taliban, funded by a Saudi billionaire who moved to Afghanistan and was, you know, he had his Saudi passport revoked in 1994, so he was no longer a Saudi citizen. All of the hijackers were Saudi Arabian or Middle Eastern. You know, they all went to the same camp. They were all taught under the same guy. And yeah, America got him back. I've seen, there's a podcast of the Navy SEALs and the killing of Osama bin Laden. One of the best podcasts I've ever listened to. I can't remember the name of it. You guys will have to Google it, but it's actually one of the Navy SEALs who was in there. And yeah, it's brilliant. And I almost cheered when he said, and I shot him between the eyes, and I was just like, yeah, finally, you got him. You know, and that's because I remember this terrorist attack so vividly, and it lives with me as a memory. You know, it lives with you guys who are listening, I'm sure, a lot more than what it does with us. So yeah, I'd love to know if there is anybody out there who was there, anybody who was in Manhattan on that day. I'd just love to get you on for an interview. I have messaged a couple of groups who are 9/11 survivors or families of 9/11 survivors, and asked them if they would be interested in giving me an interview. Haven't had any response as of yet. So if you do know anyone or you were present, please drop me a message, because I would love to get another episode out about this, and personal experiences of the day, because I can't put into words how emotional this actually is, and how it made me feel 3,000 miles away at 10 years old, compared to how someone who must have felt, who was in Manhattan on that day and saw the tragedy unfold. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode. It is a shorter episode, but like I said, I don't want to go into any of the conspiracy theories. I don't want to go into the history of the hijackers or anything like that. I don't think the hijackers deserve airtime, and I don't think, really, conspiracy or not, it was still the worst thing in my lifetime that I will ever remember, as a tragedy like that. So, yeah, I'll leave you with that. So, thank you for listening, guys. And like I said, get in contact with me. This Week in History on Facebook, twihpod@gmail.com if you want to email me, or patreon.com/thisweekinhistory. So thanks for listening, guys. Remember, we all have history. Make yours great. Bye-bye.
Any moment that lets you just sit back, relax, and enjoy even 1 second of the day to yourself and taste like pumpkins, that's a moment to look forward to. The McCafe Pumpkin Spice Latte is back. Get a $2 small hot or iced for a limited time. Or try one of our other freshly brewed espresso drinks. From iced caramel macchiatos to caramel frappes to hot mochas to every sweet treat in between. Only at McDonald's. Price and participation may vary.
VaxStats. It's time for VaxStats. If you're young and healthy, you are more likely to crash your car than have a serious side effect of the COVID-19 vaccine. So get vaxxed, y'all. Visit vaccinate.virginia.gov.
Life gets a lot more magical when you dream. So let's dream of a vacation unlike any other. A magical Disney cruise.
Hiya, pal!
Where new stories meet tales as old as time.
Enchanté, mon ami.
And your family will be cared for the moment you step aboard. Sail from Florida to Disney's private island paradise and get ready for a dream come true with Disney Cruise Line.
Peacock fuels your true crime obsession with exclusive new originals. John Wayne Gacy, Devil in Disguise.
Clowns can get away with murder.
And Epstein's shadow, Ghislaine Maxwell.
She inherited Jeffrey Epstein's secrets.
Plus the most bingeable crime series, Snapped. Sign up now at peacocktv.com.
Life gets more magical when you dream. So dream of a Disney cruise filled with magic and wonder.
Hiya, pal!
Sail from Florida to Disney's private island paradise and get ready for a dream come true with Disney Cruise Line.